if there's one thing that Uncle Sam is gonna do, he's going to get his money.
Lights out, I'm your favorite. Too many ways, baby.
Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Ariel, and I create content related to fitness, finance, travel, and lifestyle. I do sprinkle in a few candid conversations, so if you're into that sort of thing, consider subscribing down below. And today I want to talk to you guys about leaving the country and moving to a new country. So for those of you guys who don't know, I moved to the UK. I'm originally from the US, specifically Florida, and I have relocated to the UK. So I wanted to talk to you guys about moving. If you're considering moving, some things to think about when moving. First, I'm going to start off in very general terms, just some things for anyone to consider when moving, and then I'm going to talk about the UK specifically because that is the country that I moved to, so that is the country that I'm going to have the most information on. So let's go ahead and jump into the video. So the first thing you want to consider when moving to a new country is, what are the tax implications? I'm American, and if there's one thing that Uncle Sam is gonna do, he's going to get his money, because US citizens are taxed on their worldwide income. So that means that even if you are out of the country living somewhere else, you are at risk of being taxed in America in addition to the country that you are located in. Now, there are some exemptions which you could qualify for if you are an American citizen or a permanent resident, so whichever category you fall into. So there is the foreign earned income exclusion, and then there is the foreign tax credit. There are some other exemptions that I may not be privy to. I would highly recommend speaking to an accountant or a tax lawyer, just an expert in that area, to understand what the tax implications of leaving the country are. For the foreign earned income exclusion, you do have to be considered a bona fide resident. So what that means is that you are a resident within the terms of the IRS definition of a resident, and you are a resident for the full calendar year in that foreign country. Another way that you can earn this is if you are a resident of that country for 330 full days within that calendar year. So how they calculate how many days you've been in the country is a little bit crazy, and there's a lot of examples that are given on the IRS website. I'm going to link the IRS website down below just in case you want to go ahead and take a look at it yourself. There is the foreign earned income exclusion, and then there is the foreign tax credit. Foreign tax credit means that you qualify for some credits if you've already paid taxes in the country that you're currently living in. Now, this doesn't mean that you don't have to pay Uncle Sam anything, but it might lower your tax burden. This was a shock to me when I first read it. I was like, wait a minute, like, you mean I still can get taxed by the US government even though I'm not living in there, I'm not making use of the roads, any of the benefits that come along with living in America? I'm not having access to any of that, but you still want my money though. Yeah, it's kind of crazy, and the US is one of the few countries that do that. Usually other countries tax you based on where you're a resident of. So if you're living outside of that country, your home country, they're not going to tax you, but America will. So the second thing to consider when you are looking to move to a foreign country is, what is the cost of living? So the cost of living varies from country to country. So the salary that you're making in one country might be a little bit lower than what's needed to survive in the country that you're moving to, and vice versa. So when we're thinking about the US generally has a higher cost of living compared to other countries. For example, I moved to the UK. Generally, the UK's cost of living is lower than the US cost of living. So you really need to figure out, what's the rent like? What is the energy? It really gives you an idea of what salary that you're willing to accept and what is a livable wage in the country that you're going to. I would also consider what the culture is and would you be a good culture fit for where you're moving. So visiting that country would be the best indicator on whether you want to move to that country or not. Doing research on the local websites for apartments, for houses, just to understand what the structure is, I would highly recommend that before you jump right in and move to that country. So the third thing to consider is how are your possessions going to get from your home country to the country that you want to move to. So I joined a lot of Facebook groups that talked about being expats in the UK, and there were just horror stories about how they went with a moving company who packaged all their stuff and they had to incur unexpected costs. There were broken items, the moving company didn't execute properly. So just really consider the cost of relocating your possessions from your home country to your new country. For me, I just brought clothes and I showed up, and I think honestly that is the easiest way. Having to think through how your furniture is going to get there, making sure that your furniture is not damaged on the journey there, making sure that you are with a reputable moving company, and just the ins and outs of that just seems quite complicated. And if you do want to keep all of your possessions, you don't want to get rid of anything, either because it's more financially sound for you to just move your possessions from your home country to your country of relocation, then go for it. But 100% do your research, because there are so many scams out there. There's so many companies who claim that they can do the job for a quoted price and then it turns out to be higher. So just really look into that. I would highly recommend joining Facebook groups and just asking questions either anonymously or even as yourself, and just ask, hey, what's the lowdown? What companies have you guys you need to shut down all of your accounts. So how long is this move going to be? Is it a forever move or is it a temporary move? If it is a forever move, I would recommend looking into closing certain accounts. There are certain credit card companies that if they see no activity on your account, they will likely close your account after a period of time. Using your credit cards in a foreign country is kind of tricky, just because a lot of credit card companies, even if they have no foreign transaction fees, they do a markup on that conversion rate. So I would just highly recommend looking into your accounts. Also, if you are not closing your accounts and you're deciding, okay, well, I'm only going to be here for a couple of years, looking into, for example, if you are keeping your checking account, what is the minimum amount that you have to keep in your account for it to not charge you a monthly maintenance fee? And I'm talking about specifically in the US. I don't know how it is in other countries, but in the US, a lot of the major banks, you do have to keep a certain amount in your account or have a certain direct deposit that is going into your account, make a certain amount of transactions a month to make sure that you have no monthly maintenance fee. So ensuring that you're keeping that threshold is really important, or you're at risk of paying a monthly maintenance fee. Or if you just want to go ahead and close the account, that is something to think about. Also, for your credit cards, like I mentioned before, there are a lot of credit card companies, if they don't see an activity on your account from time to time, they will close the account for you. That will have impacts on your credit score. I don't know if it matters. If you're moving back to the country, it would matter. So just consider those things. What is going to happen with all of my financial accounts? What's going to happen with all of the accounts that I have? Maybe you have water, light in your name. Just making sure that everything is on the up and up and shut down and kind of consistent, so that when you relocate to your foreign country, you're not having to tie up loose ends in your home country. And the fifth and final tip is, how are you going to get from your home country to the country that you want to relocate to? So there are borders, obviously. And speaking as a US citizen, although the US passport is strong, you still do need visas. You need either a work visa, student visa. How are you going to sort that visa process out? If you are relying on a work visa, I would highly recommend being very careful and understanding what that means if you were to get terminated from your place of employment. What is the leeway, or what is the amount of time that you have to find another employer that is willing to sponsor you? If you're going on a student visa, understanding what that means. A lot of student visas, you do have the opportunity to stay in the country for a period of time after you graduate, but then after that, you're either going to have to find sponsorship or return to your home country. So how are you going to get to your desired country? Is it going to be through a work visa? Is it through a business visa? Is it going to be through a student visa? Just kind of figuring that out, because you may be asked that, especially when you're leaving. So for me personally, I do have UK citizenship, but when I was leaving the US, because my return ticket, and yes, I did buy a return ticket, but I decided to buy the return ticket about 10 months out so that I could go back home. When I showed up to the airport, they asked me if I had a visa, because you are staying in the country over 6 months, which for the UK, we are able to stay for up to 6 months, I believe, in the UK. So they were like, where's your visa? And they are going to ask that. So make sure that you have all your documents in place to prove that you can legally stay in the country longer than what the allotted time is. All right, so now that we've gotten the general logistics out of the way, I'm going to speak on the UK specific logistics if you're looking to move to the UK. I ended out the general logistics talking about how you're going to get from one country to the next. Do you need a visa? Do you need a passport, etc., etc.? I'm going to begin the UK specific logistics with that as well. The first thing to consider is, how are you going to get to the UK? So I'm going to link the UK governmental website below, because there are actually a lot of ways that you can get to the UK. There's a skilled worker visa, there's student visas, there's even a program where if you have graduated from a top school like Harvard and MIT, I believe you can stay there for a period of time, which I didn't know. So I leave that all down below, but that's one thing to consider if you're wanting to come to the UK. How are you going to get there? The second recommendation that I have is to understand the UK tax rate. Everything above £50,000, they tax at a 40% rate. If it's below £50,000, there are different tax brackets, which I will post up here somewhere along here. So that's something to consider. Understanding the tax structure would allow you to understand what you need to survive in this country, as well as how much is coming out of your paycheck. And there is actually a calculator also on the UK website, which I also will link down below, where you can look into, okay, you have an estimate of how much you're going to get taxed, and it shows how much your paycheck may be when you come to the UK. But understanding that the tax structure is significantly different, they're taxed at a higher rate, and there are a whole bunch of fees that I had no idea. For example, a TV license, a council tax fee. There's certain fees that I just didn't know about that I'm learning about. That's one thing to know. One good thing is that you don't have to file taxes, so that's good. Everything is just kind of taken out. At least to my knowledge, you don't have to file taxes. Hopefully I'm right in that assumption. Number 3, look into finding housing. The area that I live in, the UK, the housing market was booming, and once an apartment was on the market, it went. Like, I kept on trying to call and say, hey, like, I'm moving, can I take a look at the apartment? And they said that they have like 5 other people that are coming to view the apartment. Also, even when I was trying to go through different avenues and different channels, the landlord was saying that they wanted to meet the person. So I wasn't able to do anything virtually. A lot of times they were like, well, I want to be able to meet you, which was very difficult because I was essentially homeless. Like, I didn't want to show up to the country homeless. I wanted to have a guaranteed place to stay, and sometimes that is not what actually happens in your situation. But there are some great websites like Rightmove as well as Spare Room that will kind of help alleviate that process. But getting housing for me personally, I found quite difficult, and especially if you want to live in, say for example, an apartment complex that is the landlord is more corporate, there's certain qualifications that you need, and if you don't meet those qualifications, what they're going to ask for is 6 months rent up front, which I'm like, what? The reason being is because you do not have UK credit, so they don't really want to take a chance on you. You don't have UK credit, you don't have a tenancy history in the UK, so you are seen as a high risk to them, and one way to kind of mitigate that risk is for you to pay everything up front. If you go on websites like Spare Room, etc., there are a little bit more individual landlords that give a little bit more leeway from what I found, but make sure that you have housing because these houses fly off the market like hotcakes, especially if you're in southern England. So places like London, for example, it's going to be extremely expensive, and it's going to be quite quick in when it goes on the market to when a renter is found. And there are a lot of places that have flatmates, so understanding what you're getting yourself into. So I've seen a lot of apartments in the UK where you have 5 other flatmates, 4 other flatmates. You might have to get a flatmate just based on what you're able to afford or the area that you're in. I know London is like famously expensive, and a lot of times the only option is to have a flatmate. So really understanding what that looks like for you would be beneficial before deciding to pick up and move and go to the UK. So the fourth tip that I have for someone who wants to come to the UK from their home country is to look into setting up a bank account. Another thing that was hard in addition to getting housing in the UK was setting up a bank account as well as setting up a phone plan. To set up a bank account, you need an address. In order to get a phone plan, you need a bank account. And in order to get housing, you need to have either good credit, pay in advance, or go with an independent landlord, which can come with its own issues. So it's just kind of like that chicken or the egg. It's like it's just, they make it very difficult to establish yourself without having a permanent physical address. And what they consider as a permanent physical address on some of these bank accounts is they want to see lease agreements, light or energy coming into your name. They want to see something substantial. They don't want to just see, oh, well, here's this random thing. Here's this random piece of paper with my address. They want certain documentations, which I completely understand. It just makes it difficult because you have to get a bank account, and then to even get a phone or a contract plan to try to build up your credit, you need that bank account, which requires a physical address, which you don't have because you're having problems establishing housing. So there are certain banks that make it a little bit easier. I don't know if from a regulatory standpoint or from a privacy or safety standpoint that's a good thing, but I would look into those smaller online banks if you want to set up a bank account. Don't try to go to a like Starling or a Lloyd's or a what's another bank name, HSBC. Like, those banks are going to require very, very specific things, and their compliance and their requirements in what you need to set up a bank account is a lot more strict than a online bank account. And Starling is an online bank account, but I found that I had trouble applying for Starling. All right, so those are my tips on if you are either deciding to move to a new country, if you are in the process right now of moving to a new country, some things to think about. And thank you guys for watching. If you like this content, don't forget to leave a like down below and then also comment if you have another tip that you want to share. Say you've already moved to a new country from your home country and you have your own individual recommendations, go ahead and leave them down below if I forgot anything, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Lights out, I'm your favorite. Too many ways, been in your place, there's delays. Added up plus signs, zeros on the table. Driving and vibing, bring the beat later. Wanna make it bigger, just a little bit of flavor showing up to my space, I'm a fashion dealer.